Hey everyone, it's me Gavin, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk to you about a couple of reasons why I think you should be excited for Zenless Zone Zero, an upcoming action combat game by Hoyoverse. Now, if you've been playing any sort of gacha games in the last couple of years, you should be no stranger to Hoyoverse, as they produce some of the biggest titles in the genre, such as Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. Now, again, it should be no surprise that Zenless Zone Zero is going to be getting that treatment as well in terms of the quality. This will be one of the most high-quality produced gacha games that will be made available on mobile as well as PC and console. So again, something really great to look forward to. I've been very fortunate enough to participate in the 3 betas that were made available for this game, so I was able to get a lot of hands-on time with the game and really delve into the systems and get to experience a lot of the combat and the content that's currently available in-game. So I'm really expecting that the release of this game should be in the near future, as a couple of people were talking about like listings accidentally going up and everything. I will say that I know that there's been a lot of like controversy surrounding Zenless Zone Zero and contracts and stuff like that, but I will be very open and clear with you guys right now. I haven't received any sort of agreements or anything like there. This is not paid for, not sponsored, not an ad, any of that. I just want to talk to you guys about my own personal experiences with the game and what I like about it and what I don't like about it. But for the most part, I will say it is mostly positives. Again, very little grievances with the game. But let's start off by talking about the story without spoiling anything. I will say that it does start off really frantic. It gets you right into the action, really gets you immersed into the world immediately, introduces you to our heroes, the Cunning Hares. They are always up to some sort of shenanigans in order to like accomplish their jobs in the hollows. Very quirky characters, a lot of comedic elements and everything, I will say, in the story as well. This is definitely not your standard run-of-the-mill like fantasy type world, even though it is set in obviously a more fantasy type setting. It doesn't follow suit in terms of the same dialogue as, say, Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail. It's a little more edgy, a little rough around the edges. You got a couple of characters like swearing and stuff like that, even though that is like bleeped out for the most part. They do keep it really tasteful. I will say that a lot of the story content that I have experienced is actually really engaging, and that's something that I can say is a major plus. A lot of stuff to dig into. The world feels very alive. New Eridu has just so much lore and so many people and NPCs just like have so much dialogue and so much just to add to the world that is a lot to take in, honestly. You also have things like the internet, which I guess is their sort of version of the internet, where people just kind of go on and make forum posts and everything. So there's a lot of dialogue to read through here. And again, the way that the story is presented, in terms of just the characters kind of standing side by side and really presenting the story in a very unique way, it feels a lot more active than the other games, right? You don't just have like standing NPCs talking for the most part. There's usually like some sort of like cutscene thrown in there or some sort of like comic style storytelling as well, which is really cool to see. Just a different take, something to change it up a little bit. But I will say that it is very nice to see the characters very fully emotive as well, because their facial expressions and everything, it seems very different than, again, stuff that we've had in the past, which is mouth flaps for the most part, I guess. But again, just the presentation, I guess, of the overall story, very different. A lot more in-depth, a lot more engaging, immersive. Those are kind of the words I'm going to be throwing around here a lot with this recommendation. But I will say that the story is definitely one of the high points, and you get to meet a lot of different characters, and it's really cool to see that those characters actually participate in the actual hub world as well. So whenever you are doing any sort of story content, you will more than likely meet these characters within the hollows. Now, the hollows are these closed-off areas that are getting infested by these ethereals, as they call them, essentially our enemies. They're very dangerous, and the longer that you spend in the hollow is the more risk that you are exposed to the corruption, and a person may become an ethereal after they are exposed too much to this corruption. So very interesting stuff that's going on here with that. But I will say that, again, it's nice to see those characters that you meet within the hollows or before you enter the hollow actually appear out in the hub world, and you can talk to them. You can actually go on like, I would call them like private action sessions or whatever, I guess, but events in which you will actually go and hang out with these characters. For example, like just going and hanging out at the arcade and just playing a couple of games with one of the characters that you meet. So again, there's a lot of stuff like that, very interactive. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything in terms of like story and everything, but it's very cool to see that. That's probably one of the biggest points that I will say is exciting: the story, the world, and again, just meeting the cast of characters, right? Outside of that, you do have stuff like the music. The music is very cool with this game. It's a very different take in terms of like stuff that you see in a normal game. I'd say it's reminiscent a lot of like Persona, I guess, but at the same time there's a lot of different like tracks that are very like vibey, and I really find a hard time not like moving around, I guess, in my computer chair and just kind of like bobbing along to the music, which is really cool because that's a good sign, in my opinion, of just something that really hooks you in the feels, and again, it gets you immersed, right? So whenever you hear those like really bombastic tracks and like stuff that's kind of like groovy, a little more like R&B and kind of street vibey, I guess, it's nice to just kind of sway along with them while you're like duking it out with a couple of like ethereals and stuff. I will say it's very cool, and I really can't wait to see what other kind of tracks are going to be introduced in the future as well. Pretty much almost all the audio and everything is really like tied to the events that are going on as well, which is something that I really respect. So again, if you're playing something like one of the arcade games in the arcade, it kind of goes more of like a retro vibe and everything, and it's very fitting for each and every single scenario and situation, and honestly, I really appreciate that. A lot of like the audio cues in terms of like doing the different special attacks and everything in the game, they've got a lot of impact to them, and you feel the weight of the hits. A lot of characters sometimes are a little bit more like swift, and a lot of other characters are a little bit more of a heavy hitter, and you really get to feel the difference in their attacks when they're delivered. Again, the audio design here overall is just top tier, and honestly, again, like I said, I just can't wait to hear more of it, so that is another great high point, something to look forward to. There's a lot of stuff available in the game, like events and everything, which again, you should be no stranger to if you've been playing any of the other Hoyoverse games. So it seems to be like there's going to be a lot of different events that you're going to be able to partake in and be able to get a lot of different rewards and everything to pull from more characters. You know, a lot of the usual stuff that we do see, but I will say that the events that I've experienced thus far in the beta and everything have been very, very well put together, super fun, very entertaining, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to see what else the game is going to have to offer in the future. I do believe that this game is going to be a lot more popular than people are giving it credit for when it does release. I think a lot of people are just kind of like, you know, skeptical, a little bit nervous about it and everything, and honestly, I kind of get that. I really do. Obviously, everybody's going to be a little bit more cautiously optimistic when it does come to Zenless Zone Zero, and, you know, whether or not they think it's going to be successful, but I think it's going to be a great game for people to actually cover and make content for. I think it's going to be very streamable, especially with a lot of, like, the different roguelike elements that are going to be introduced in the more difficult half of the game as well. Again, it makes very good content, and it feels very rewarding when we're actually able to complete some of the challenges and take it like a really hard boss. I will say that it is very, very engaging, as I've been saying, and very immersive, but it also has a certain level of difficulty as well, which again makes good content. So if you're looking at the game from a content creation perspective, then this is one of the ones that should be on your radar, in my opinion. Again, it feels a little bit more gritty, a little more rough around the edges, a little more aimed at like the teen audience, possibly like young adult, and again, I don't really think it goes too far in that regard. It's nothing like, you know, Nikkei or anything of that sort, or Azure Lane, or anything, you know, a little more perverse, but I will say that, obviously, yes, it is a little more etchy, I guess, in terms of its style when it comes to certain different characters and everything, which I kind of appreciate, honestly, but at the same time, like, it's not taken too far where it's not safe for work or distasteful or anything in that aspect. So I will say that, like, the art style, for the most part, is really well put together. I actually dig a lot of the different like environments and all the, you know, the areas that we do get to experience so far. I do hope that there are a little more diverse areas that we do get to experience when it comes to combat feels, which I'm sure will get updated when the game launches, but for the most part right now, they are very much like street vibes, kind of like run down, a little more abandoned, kind of beat up, and you can really see that these are areas where combat is taking place, but again, you get a lot of that street vibe as well. Running like your own video store and everything in the hub world is really damn cool to see. Again, it had so much more in terms of like different elements for the gameplay. So again, for the most part, in the hub world, you're kind of just hanging around, managing your video store. You can go grab a bowl of ramen, go and get a coffee at the coffee shop, go and play games at the arcade, visit the music store, and get like different equips and everything for your characters. You can just go and visit the newspaper stand and hang out with Doggo and scratch your lucky card every single day. There's so much cool stuff, man. Like the way that the game progresses as well is that each and every single event that you do progresses like the time of day, and certain things are available only at set times of day. Very similar again to games like Persona, so you will see those systems as well in this game, which are really cool in my opinion. I like that kind of style of game, so that's something else that is really cool to look forward to. If you're looking for a game that's a little bit more relaxed as well, that's the nice thing about Zenless Zone Zero. I do find that this one is not so time investment heavy, I guess. It really respects the player's time, and it's kind of shown off in a lot of different ways. I do feel like playing this game, I've also been able to play it on my mobile phone, which is fantastic, and it runs very easily. I've played it on a couple of different devices, and I will say that it's not very taxing, in my opinion, as long as you have something that's somewhat recent. But I will say that it feels great to just be able to pick up the game on the go and play just a little bit, even if I'm just going out for like a car ride or something like that there, and I'm a passenger. I can easily just pick up the phone, play a little bit. I actually have a Backbone 1 as well, which I plugged in. I've tested that out, and that works immediately, which is fantastic. So maybe you just don't like touch controls, and you just want to play with something that feels like a controller. That's a great alternative as well. I'm not really sure if it's going to support like a large plethora of different like devices or whatever, but I do know that the Backbone 1 works, so I'm going to guess that a couple of other like controller attachments for mobile phone will work as well. If not, I'm sure that you can end up doing like some sort of mapping or whatever with a third-party application possibly, but so far it seems like there's a lot of support already built in, which is nice to see, because games like Genshin unfortunately don't have that built in for mobile, which is something that is kind of an oversight in my opinion, but it's nice to see it here with Zenless Zone Zero. Now, something I definitely want to point out, because I know a lot of people don't really have a whole lot of time to be playing games, it's very easy to pick this up and put it down. You also get to see a little bit more respect for the player's time in terms of like being able to go and make farm materials for your character, so whether it be like experience materials or promotion materials to rank up your characters, even just stuff to like improve the power of your skills. Whenever you go to do these sort of quests, you do have the option to go and increase the amount of materials that you're able to require. Now, it will increase the difficulty of the battle that you're going to be facing here, but it's really nice to see a lot more customizability with the system. So, for example, if you want to like rank up a couple of different characters, you don't have to go and individually like fight certain enemies within this mode in order to just make sure that you're accruing the right materials for one character. So you're actually able to go in and set up like custom plans where you can introduce whichever enemies you need to face in order to rank up certain characters, or again just get extra experience materials alongside ranking up other characters. You have the availability to currently just go in and customize exactly what you need. So say if you're only planning on playing as a certain 3 characters, you can set up a plan to have 3 of those characters' materials drop specifically from one battle plan, and you can just go and run that one, and honestly just make sure that you're not going and doing everything individually and wasting more time if you don't need to. It's very respectful again of your time, which is nice to see, and it doesn't require any like additional materials or anything like it there in order to like let's say condense resin, right? So it's very nice to see that you do have a lot of availability there in order to save yourself some time. In terms of mission duration, you're looking at roughly about like 15 minutes or so, I'd say, maybe a little bit less to complete most missions in this game. The very short duration, again, it's very much get in, read a little bit of dialogue sometimes. If you're exploring through the hollows, you can also just go and do combat-only hollows, which is also really nice. Again, that great option in order for you to be able to just go in, jump right into combat, and you can replay a lot of these events as well. Some of the more difficult content in the game will take a little bit longer, obviously, especially when when you start like experience stuff like corruption throughout your runs, which is really going to factor into a lot of replayability in my opinion. Just, you know, getting 100% corruption, and then all of a sudden you're attacked with the debuff that's with you for the remainder of that mission. It's nice to see a little bit, honestly, but at the same time, again, the duration of each mission is very respectful of your time, especially if you do want to just play more casually. You do have that option as well. But if you are looking for a little bit more of a challenge, you can enable challenge mode if you want, and that kind of makes the enemies a little bit more tanky, a little more difficult to deal with. There's also things like hard mode, which you will end up getting the experience as well later on. A lot of other things that you will see similar to other games, like weekly content that you can clear as well for different rewards and everything. So there's a lot of different game modes for you to experience. Again, very nice, very easy to just pick up and put down. And I guess that kind of leads me to my next point, which is the combat, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are curious about. I will say that the combat feels very snappy, super fluid, very responsive. It's very quick, it's hands-on, and honestly, I really like what they've done this time around with the beta. So you get a whole lot of like visual indicators in terms of like blockable attacks or parryable attacks, I guess, and then also attacks that you just really want to dodge at the exact moment, so that way you're able to follow up with a counterattack. So the combat is a little more, I wouldn't say difficult, I guess, but robust, I guess is the best word for it. And honestly, it feels so good whenever you pull off some great synergies with a couple of different characters. And speaking of which, a lot of the characters feel very unique, and their playstyles vary so much in between them. It's nice to just get in and play around with them and see which ones suit your playstyle, right? So some characters feel very quick. They have a lot of like actions which really kind of like coincide with them being able to dash really quickly. Or you also have characters that are a little bit more advantageous in terms of like hitting really heavy, but they're a little more sluggish. And honestly, it's really cool to just get in and play around with that. I will say that there's definitely a couple of characters that I find are a little more from my niche, and I'm sure that you guys will be able to experience that as well whenever you unlock some of these characters as well. I will say that they have a great synergy attacks as well, and then you also have the ability to incorporate Bang Boo into your setup. So that's something that is really good to look forward to, as they are recruitable, and you will be able to actually mix and match whatever kind of like setup that you have, depending on whatever situation that you're going into. So a lot of these missions will usually recommend certain elements that are more beneficial within that mission. So really, again, kind of like want you to play around a little bit more with different like party makeups and everything, so you're not really kind of like stuck with those same three characters that you may just want to build. Again, it's really nice to go in and play around with that, and you also get to try out a lot of these characters whenever they're available, like for different banners. Very similar again to other gacha games, but it's nice. Again, you're just able to go in, play around with them, see if you like them, see if they're worth pulling for. That's up to you completely. And again, I guess that kind of leads me to the next thing, which is the gacha system. And yes, there is a gacha system in the game, obviously. It is a Hoyoverse game, but I will say that the rates and everything are very similar to Honkai Star Rail, in my opinion, and the pity, the forgiveness, and everything is very Hoyoverse. So not really a whole lot out of the ordinary, I guess, with this one, but there are a couple of different like banners and everything that you can go and partake in, whether it be recruiting a character, or maybe you're just looking to recruit like different W engines for your character, which are kind of like their weapons, I guess. So we've got like a character banner, a weapon banner, and then also you have the Bang Boo banner, which is kind of your companion, and you can utilize them in combat as well. So your Bang Boo, the way that it operates is that if you're given a quick time like character swap event in the middle of combat, you can actually choose between your characters, and sometimes you're given the option for your Bang Boo, which will end up providing a special attack as well in combat, which is really damn cool. Again, a lot of variety with them, and there's a whole slew of them to collect, so I'm sure a lot of diehards out there will be able to go and really take advantage of that Bang Boo banner to try to recruit them all, I guess. But at the same time, very, very enjoyable systems, a lot of like familiarity and everything. But for the most part, I will say that Zenless Zone Zero, in my opinion, is very polished already. It's feeling really good. I'm really looking forward to the actual final release of the game. It's just a couple of things that I wanted to point out, because I know, again, there's been a lot of like skepticism and everything regarding it. A couple of complaints that I do have is that, again, you know, for the most part, a lot of people are not really going to overly enjoy the traversal of the hollows, the solving puzzles and everything. Maybe you just want to get in and experience the combat. Again, that option is there for you, but unfortunately you will be forced with going through the hollows pretty much for the most part throughout the main story, as it is very integral to the story. But outside of that, I guess a little bit of like the layout can feel a little cluttered and everything currently with the currently ongoing beta, which is the amplifying tests. But again, I'm sure that these are things that are going to get ironed out or addressed in the future. And I didn't even realize that there was like filtering options for the internet, so again, that's something that you may want to utilize in terms of like you're decluttering your menu whenever you're going through certain things and you're just really looking for like the next quest to accept. But just a couple things to point out, I guess, for the most part. At the same time, again, I will say that it is looking very bright in terms of Zenless Zone Zero and its future. Just, I don't know, if you guys got any questions about the game, ask me down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I know that this is pretty sporadic and kind of like rambly or whatever, but for the most part, I don't know, I guess it's just pure excitement in my voice, honestly. I'm really anxious to see just how everybody receives the game. I know there's been like a lot of signups and everything, so it's looking good, I'll say that much. And again, if you're just worried about not really having a whole lot of time, considering the fact that you're more than likely playing like, you know, 1 or 2 gacha games as of right now, don't be worried, because again, the game really respects your time. It's very easy to just log in day to day if you want to, or whenever you feel like it, and just pick it up and put it down. Again, it's really nice. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Anyways, if you guys did find this a little bit informative or anything, or if you do enjoy this type of video and you want to see more of it, then please give the video a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. Also, you know, subscribe to the channel if you guys want, because I'm going to be covering Zenless Zone Zero over here from the time that it releases, hopefully, and going forth. But anyways, that's going to do it for me, so thank you very much for watching. As always, I really appreciate it. Thank you again. I will see you all for the next one. Take care. Peace.